Hey, I'm Alex Rackle from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Dionysia from Button Shy Games. Dionysia is a two-player drafting game. I should note that if you go ahead and look at the Kickstarter page, it does say it's a 1 to 2 player drafting game. The rules I have only reference 2 players, so I don't know if that's something that they're going to be changing or possibly an expansion. Make sure to go ahead and check out that page. I'll have a link down below. Speaking of which, this is a prototype, all rules and components subject to change. Now with that, let's walk you through how you actually play this game, because ultimately, like I said already, this is a 2-player drafting game where players are trying to create a 3x3 grid in order to score based on the top cards in that grid. Basically, on your turn, you're going to have an open display over here. You're going to have a display with 3 cards, and players are going to take turns going back and forth, drafting a card, and then replacing one from the deck. Now, for example, if I went ahead and draft this card, it becomes the first card in one of my 3 acts. Like I said already, you're creating a 3x3 grid. That's going to be 3 columns, otherwise known as acts, and each column has 3 cards in it. This is an 18 card game. You'll be using all 18 cards to create your 2 9-card displays. We'll go ahead and replace the deck with a new, we'll place the grid with a new card over here. The next player will draft their own card, at which point we'll place another card, and now that we're going back to this player, they now have a choice of what to do. They can go ahead and create a new act, starting a new act in the game. They can alternatively create a new key card in an act, placing it over an existing card, or they can place it underneath, supporting the key card in that act, and adding its symbols to that grid. Those are your 3 options. Starting a new act, if you don't have 3 yet, placing it underneath or above another card in an existing act, and you'll do that until you have a grid of 3x3, a 3x3 grid representing 9 cards. Now, I've saved you a lot of time over here by gathering a bunch of cards to create an endgame scoring situation, so you can see what endgame scoring is like in this game. Because we'll have a grid of, well, 3x3. So for example, you can see over here, I have Doomed Prophecy for my Act 1's key card, I have Dark Revelations for my Act 2 key card, and then I have They Love Me Not for my Act 3 key card. All of them having a little light flavor text beneath them to add to the immersion in the game. But what you're trying to score in this game, the thing you're trying to do is you're trying to go ahead and pay attention to your key cards because they have scoring conditions on them. This card, Doomed Prophecy, says 3 points if this act has no daggers. And as you can see, it has no daggers. I only have 1 dagger in my entire display, and it's down here, not in this act. Over here we have Dark Revelation. If this is Act 2's key scene, get 2 points, and it is the key scene in Act 2. And then we have They Love Me Not. For every skull in Act 3, you get a point, which is going to give me 4 points. So right now I'm already getting 3 plus 2 plus 4. But additionally, each card gives you a pattern, and you're going to score a point for that pattern no matter how many times it occurs, even reusing symbols as necessary. So for example, this pattern over here, Doomed Prophecy, wants a skull and 2 chalices. To that end, we have a skull and 2 chalices, that's a point right there. We have a skull and 2 chalices, that's another point. We have a skull and 2 chalices, a third point, that's going to be 3 points for that particular grid, that particular scoring pattern. And I note over here, this chalice is part of this pattern, and this pattern, you can reuse things as much as you want. Over here we have this pattern, 3 skulls in a row. We have 1, 2, and 3 instances of 3 skulls in a row, so another 3 points. And then we have They Love Me Not, wanting 1. Over here, let's see if we can try to track all of these. We have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4. I think we just have the 4. I'd have to look through it again, but that's ultimately how you would score. So, once again, to recap over here, this is a 2-player drafting game, possibly with a solo mode. Check out that Kickstarter page down below. But ultimately, you're drafting cards back and forth in order to create that 3x3 grid. You're going to look at the key card in each of your acts, which will give you a scoring condition as well as a scoring pattern, and you're going to score both of those for all of your cards, then look back and forth and see who scored the most points in Dionysus. Which brings us to the review of what I like and don't like about this game. And honestly, I don't know if it's really anything of what I like and don't like. I think Dionysus mostly is, for me, a game that I'm going to compare to other games and how this one makes me feel compared to other games trying to do the same thing. And this, to a certain extent, is the both blessing and curse of Button Shy Games. There's 18 cards, there's usually not a lot going on here, and it's how innovative and creative can they be around different ways to utilize those systems in either 1, 2, or sometimes more player games. This one falls into that 2-player point scoring optimization genre. You are drafting cards, place them into a grid, trying to score based off of those, and it checks all the boxes. This is a fine game. I've had fun playing through this. I am curious if there is a solo mode and what that does, but again, I haven't played that. I don't know what that does, so right now I'm only commenting on the two-player game, and ultimately this checks all the boxes. It's a fine game. It's a 3.5 out of 5. That's kind of where I am on this. There's not a lot of interesting things to go into past that, because you're drafting cards. There's the key card, there's the individual symbols, and the symbols are the main thing that's going on because you have 9 cards, 3 of which are key cards, 6 of which are just symbols. There's only 3 symbols, so it's really just about trying to find 3 good key cards and then how to support or, well, replace them as needed to take advantage and optimize the best. One thing we didn't touch upon, there's a few ability cards in here that give you a one-time ability instead of a scoring mechanism, and then ideally you want to cover those up. And usually when I play this, I find myself picking those key cards early on and then trying to support them, and then being willing to pivot if the right card comes out at the right time that I think better sets me up for success. But there's just a limit as to how much is going on here. Again, final thoughts here, 3.5 out of 5. It does a good job. There's nothing I didn't like. It's just a question of how good is this within the genre of other good games, which is where I'm going to kind of focus on recommendations for a second here. This whole review, as far as general thoughts, final thoughts, recommendations, are all mixed up, because to me, the game that does this kind of thing best is actually another button shy game, Skulls of Sedlec. That's a game about drafting cards into scoring patterns with a ton more nuance and depth and complexity to it, but not complexity that makes it hard to learn. It's a very absorbable game, very easy to teach, easy to play, and it's one of my favorite button shy games in general. It's one of my favorite 18 card games in general. It's just a great experience, and I have a hard time playing Dionysus and not to some extent comparing it to that. Another game that this gave me similar vibes to is a game called Sirens, a different game that has both solo and multiplayer that again is forcing you to try to figure out how to combine things in ways that I thought, at least while not necessarily as good as Skulls of Sedlec, I thought it was different enough that it felt like a very different experience. Where Dionysus checks all the boxes is it's just a good game. It does everything you want a good game like this to do. Where it suffers a little bit is I think it feels a bit too similar to Skulls of Sedlec for me, that ultimately I found myself just wanting to play Skulls of Sedlec. So, passing marks by all accounts. I just think there are better games out there. That's going to be my review of Dionysus. I hope you found that helpful in some way. As always, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.